My name is John Pasfield, and the title of this reading will be Bethune, Video 7, The Planning Notebook. This is my novel, Bethune, the only person alive in the world. In this video, though, I'm going to read from the planning notebook, which I wrote while I was planning and writing the novel. The title of a notebook is Planning, the Only Person Alive in the World, and it can be found and accessed for free on my website, johnpasfield.ca. It covers a span of 6 years, from the first idea of writing a novel on this topic till I had a complete rough draft that I could polish. Now, the novel is 49,000 words, and the notebook is 60,000 words. So the notebook is longer than the novel, a notebook that allowed me to write the novel. In this reading, I'm going to present 5 passages as a sample of what the Bethune notebook contains. So here's the first passage which I lifted out of the notebook to read. Reading about Bethune, Canada, outer frames, 5 sharp scenes of extreme action, realistic but almost hallucinatory. Bethune in action, Montreal, St. Lawrence Boulevard, caught in a demonstration, police attack demonstrators, Bethune helping the wounded, Sanitarium, Trudeau Hospital, Bethune draws air from his own lung. 3 more scenes. No explanation for these, simply the scene and the action. On medias res, operating on a child, removing a lung. As I mentioned before, the 5 Canada chapter outer frames will be the hardest to plan, but once I get that right, I'll be okay. Outer frames, a dramatic, intense experience in the life of Bethune. Inner thoughts, all of the experience of that time in Bethune's life. In this case, the Canadian experience. No hurry on this one. It will develop on its own. So, just figuring that the novel gives me ideas, the future novel, but it'll have to develop on its own pace, I guess you'd say. Here's the second section that I lifted out of the planning notebook. Is the painting of the mural an outer frame, ? Perhaps for chapter 1, ? Or is it a backbone or perhaps a coda? We will see. Perhaps it's a case of intensive cross-referencing, as in Pompeii and Ostrich. Well, that's a reference to 2 novels I'd already written, so I'm trying to build on my novel writing experience. Pompeii, Vesuvius Dominus, a novel by John Pasfield I had written. I'm drawing on that experience. Ostrich, A Visit with Granddad, my mom's novel, I think, but as she's the little girl in the bottom corner, her 2 parents are seated. Her dad's a Royal Marine in England. Her brothers are standing. Her grandfather, my great-grandfather, Henry Kennett, is standing, and so is the older sister of my mother's mother. So I'm drawing on earlier novels that are written to try to figure out how to shape the Bethune information into a novel. Now, a couple of technical terms there. Outer frame, well, that's simply the story of the novel, the action story, the story of each chapter. So each novel has an outer frame of action. Each chapter has an outer frame of action. Well, what's the inner? The inner is the thought. So outer frame of action, inner thought. Backbone, I like to have images that run right through the middle of every chapter. So I think of it as a backbone, as it would be in a person or an animal. An image that's referred to in every chapter. It's kind of a touchstone, a measurement image, you might say. A coda, another term I use. Well, a coda comes at the end of a chapter. Often it's an image that's not drawn from the life of the main character. It's kind of a measurement image as well. It's kind of a little flip at the end of the chapter. An image that says, what about me? You know, we have folk tales, see the ugly duckling. None of we humans are ducks, and hopefully we're not ugly, but it tells something about human nature, right? It's an image not drawn from our own life that seeks to comment on our life. Last one was cross-reference. So again, that's similar to the backbone. Cross-referencing means that you may be in China but there's a reference to Canada. You may be in Spain, but there's a reference to China and Canada. Because as you'll see as I read more of this note, it's a 3-part novel. Bethune in Canada, 5 chapters. Bethune in Spain, 5 chapters. Bethune in China, 5 chapters. So to tie the novel together, you have cross-referencing images. As I say, the Canada section of the novel will be over in the first 5 chapters, but Canada as an image will be referenced through the rest of the 15 chapters. Okay, so outer frames, to take one of those. I made a list here, and they're just dashes, but I'll number them. Outer frames, what would be in these outer frame stories, I'm wondering? Well, 1, painting mural. 2, collapsing lung. Like each of these could be the outer frame, the story of a particular chapter in Canada. 3, demonstration and repression. Now this was the demonstrating against the economy during the Depression. It happened to be in Montreal, and the police put an end to that demonstration. So that could be a chapter in Canada. 4, operating on a little girl. Bethune often took on cases that other doctors said shouldn't be touched, meaning the chances of succeeding weren't very good, and they didn't want to have a bad record of, success and failure. But Bethune would take those on. Frances, his wife, probably not as an outer frame. So I'm thinking there, his wife won't necessarily be the story of one chapter. And later I mentioned that she'll be a backbone item. She'll be mentioned in probably every chapter, every one of the 15 chapters, no matter where he is. She'll be an image in his mind. So probably not an outer frame image. Inventing the rib shears, I say probably not there as well in brackets. 7, the children doing artwork in his apartment. What world are we creating for them? So just a question of, these are elements I want in the novel that should be in the novel. Asking myself, are these elements that will make the story of a particular chapter? Or will they go in the novel in some other way, some other image category? I'll get it eventually, I say, going back to the written note here. 5 sharp, clean action outer frames. That'll be Canada. A progression, but not stated explicitly. The idea arc, the idea plot can be carried by the inner imagery. So an arc, the arc of life in Canada, the arc of Bethune's life completely will be carried by the inner imagery. 3, here's the third segment that I've taken from the notebook. I am seeking a balance between, and then 2 dashes, number 1, control, formality, structure, order, and number 2, disparateness, variety, chaotic potential, which I believe is the basis of all literature and all art. My dissatisfaction with the prose novel of my time is that it does not have enough surface indication of order, in brackets, though it might have this at a subtle level, as all successful art does, end of bracket. It is a matter of preference. Wuthering Heights and all of the other great prose novels are not failures to me, but they do not give the same sense of an overt order that I find in poetry and poetic drama. I believe that there's both continuity and development in the novels that I have written, and I feel that my present format, in brackets arrangement of techniques, is the most satisfactory so far. I believe that it will do well with a few modifications for the next 2 or 3 novels, in brackets, probably Chaucer, Gandhi, and Bethune. What I will move on to in the future, I don't know. Well, 3 topics there. Obviously Bethune, I'm working on the Bethune novel as I'm writing these notes. Chaucer, I did go on later, a few years later perhaps, to write this novel, Geoffrey Chaucer, Canterbury Bound. I have notes on a Gandhi novel, a John Passfield Gandhi novel, but I never quite got the shape that pleased me, that would allow me to go ahead and write that novel, so I haven't written it. Will I go back to that topic in the future? Perhaps, but I have many, many topics that I'm interested in, and have many of them I have extensive notes on, others just a word or two, but we'll see. Here's the fourth passage that I took from the notebook. It just occurred to me that the novel will be about ebb and flow, the life of society on this earth during the time that Bethune is alive, order and chaos, peace and war. It could be said that he, Bethune, grew up in a peaceful Canada. However, he was born in 1890, so he's 10 years older than the 20th century. In the teens, 1910 to 1920, the world was at war while he was in his 20s. In the 1920s, his 30s, the world was at peace and prosperous. In the 1930s, his 40s, the world was plunged into depression and war in Spain, China, and many other places. The analogous and non-analogous imagery will be, 3 dashes here, 1, the ebb and flow of the seasons, 2, the shifting of tectonic plates, 3, the cycle of the years, the day, the seasons, period. The battle of the images will be between, 2 dashes, A, chaos, war, depression, poverty, inequality, tyranny, oppression, and B, peace, progress, equality, prosperity, good governance, hope. Between hope and futility. Why combat these evils if, quote, the poor will always be with you, end of quote. That's biblical, of course. Will poverty, inequality, dictatorship, displacement, oppression, torture, quote, always be with you, end of quote, question mark? A drop in the ocean. Why be a drop in the ocean? The ocean is very large. It is a vast expanse of water. Why would you want to be a little tiny drop? Bethune is 2 states of mind, 2 dashes here. 1, thought as action. 2, action as thought. So I pictured Dr. Norman Bethune as a man who never had a serious thought without turning it into an action, and never really performed an action that wasn't based on a thought. That was him. Thought as action, action as thought. And I wanted that to come through in the novel. Major note and minor note, ebb and flow. The world, in brackets society, is an overwhelming entity. One's actions as an antidote, no matter how small. Set an arm, sew up a wound. Start up an ambulance service. Climb upward through an avalanche. So that was kind of my, that was my image for the whole life and career of Dr. Norman Bethune. The world is an avalanche coming at you, especially in the 1930s, and he died in 1939. I was going to say in the 1940s, but the Second World War was looming. The world is an avalanche coming at you, but if you set an arm or heal a wound, you're climbing upward through that avalanche. Here's the fifth segment that I selected. The cross-hatching pattern will be 1, vertical. 5 crisis present moments per major cycle. So 5 in Canada, 5 crises, 5 Canadian chapters, 5 in Spain, 5 Spanish chapters, 5 in China, 5 Chinese chapters. So these are vertical. These actions happen in one chapter and they end, then on to another chapter. Okay, horizontal, cutting across the whole novel, 4 categories of each experience in Canada, Spain, China. So I'll read the 4 headings and I'll come back and do the details. A, problem. B, action. C, success. D, disillusion. So going back and getting the details. A, problem. So in every segment, in Canada, in Spain, and in China, this will happen. Problem, the need, the suffering of others, the injustice, the desire for change, the determination to change things. That's problem. Okay, B, the action, the preparation, the effort, the process, the methods by which to change things. So that's B, action. C, success. the changing of things, the altering of circumstances, the push back against the injustice. Success. Okay, D, disillusion. The difficulties, the disillusionment, the change to another sphere, to Spain, to China, to question mark. Where do you go after China? Continuing with that idea, same for all three, Canada and Spain, except for China. Perhaps success in China with no disillusionment or desire to seek different circumstances. As at the end of Canada, he's disillusioned in Canada, he goes to Spain. And Spain, he's disillusioned in Spain, he goes to China. Well, China, no disillusionment, he doesn't leave China. Things are working well there for him in terms of his value system, his ideas about what he needs to do to counteract all these negatives in society. This should work well. Leaves out personal relationships and much of personal life, but these can be hinted at in personal imagery, minor cycle, and other cycles. And again, some dashes and I'll number them. Number 1, love for art. 2, family background. 3, people he worked with. 4, off-duty moments, such as skiing in the mountains. 5, society doctor. 6, inventing instruments, etc. And then a separate one, 7, Frances, his wife, will still be a backbone item. So again, she would run through the whole novel as a touchstone image, a measurement image, something to measure every other experience against, both negative and positive, because it was a rocky marriage, I guess we could say. Well, those are the 5 segments I've taken out of the Bethune notebook. Here's a note that I wrote, which doesn't refer to Bethune, but it's what I've been thinking about in the last while. And it's pertinent, but not doesn't say so on the surface. Recently, I attended and experienced the Van Gogh exhibit, Beyond Van Gogh. Now, I had a friend who spoke fluent Dutch and was born in Holland and so on. He always said something like Van Gogh, but of course they had signs there, go this way, and G-O-G-H, so obviously the exhibit wanted you to pronounce it Van Gogh, which is how I've pronounced it all my life. So Beyond Van Gogh was the exhibit. It was a wonderful experience as it took me and my fellow attendees inside the world of the paintings and of the painter. At one point I recognized the song Vincent as played on a violin, and as I knew the general tenor of the words, it was very powerful, emotionally, to view the paintings with that sound in the air. The point of the exhibit, it seems to me, is that to his contemporaries, Vincent van Gogh seemed to be out of step with his times, as he did not wish to paint as the most acceptable painters were painting, and so his paintings did not sell, except, I believe, for one, during his lifetime. No one but his brother Theo, and presumably the purchaser of that one sold painting, believed in the kind of paintings, the form of visual art that Vincent van Gogh was engaged in exploring and developing while he was alive. In thinking about the exhibit and the thoughts and emotions that it produced in me, and presumably in my fellow attendees, I sense now that the exhibit created something of an emotional sleight of hand. The import of the exhibit and of the playing of the song is that, although all but 2 people who were alive when Vincent van Gogh was a living and working painter rejected his version of his chosen art form, we of the 21st century, if we were alive at that time, would be able to comfort and support Vincent as we realize and appreciate that the paintings that he was creating would not only be valuable in later times, but if his contemporaries could only have realized that the paintings were more about his contemporaries and that time than they were able to appreciate. And yet, is this not an illusion? An illusion that were we alive, we would have been sympathetic to Vincent in his quest, and unlike those who rejected him and his work. Is it not a pattern in the development of art forms, as it was in the experience of the Impressionist painters, whose works were not hung in the fashionable salons of the day, and in the case of Vincent van Gogh himself, whose paintings did not sell, that the art forms that are most about us, as we are living and breathing and suffering and exulting here and now, the art forms that are developing in step with the times in which we are living need time and thought to emerge as the most pertinent and most perceptive versions of the art forms that seek to illuminate what it is to be human in our time. The planning notebook can be accessed for free on my website, johnpassfield.ca. Thank you for watching this video.